The chamber is cold, even by the standards of a medieval winter. Stone walls hold the night's chill, and the warmth of the fire has faded into a dull memory. Heavy tapestries hang motionless, doing little to keep the cold from creeping inward. Somewhere beyond the walls, the countryside sleeps beneath frost and silence. Inside, a boy lies awake beneath layers of wool and fur, staring into the dark. He is 14 years old, and he is King of England. The crown rests nearby, not on his head but on a wooden table, dull in the firelight. It is heavier than it looks, not just in gold but in meaning. Titles, oaths, expectations, none of them fit comfortably on someone so young. Only days ago he stood inside Westminster Abbey as nobles bowed before him. The ceremony was grand, the words ancient, the moment unforgettable. And yet, once the echoes faded and the doors closed, he returned to a world that felt strangely unchanged. Royal life is quieter than most imagine. There are no constant feasts or celebrations, only routines shaped by tradition. Servants move softly, guards stand watch in silence. The rhythms of the castle continue whether the king is a child or a man. Outside the chamber door, power hums quietly, spoken in hushed voices, exchanged in glances rather than commands. Inside, the boy listens, learning which footsteps linger and which pass without pause. Sleep does not come easily. The bed is better than most in England, raised from the floor and layered with blankets, yet it offers little comfort. Straw shifts beneath the weight of growing limbs. The air smells faintly of smoke, old wood, and damp stone. Somewhere nearby, a servant breathes steadily in sleep, a sign to remain close through the night. Privacy, even in rest, is a luxury few kings ever know. Only a week has passed since the crown was placed upon his head. 7 days since the world began calling him Your Grace. 7 days since his name carried the weight of law. And yet he understands something even at 14. Being king and ruling a kingdom are not the same thing. Decisions are made elsewhere. Orders are issued without his voice. He signs what is placed before him and watches carefully, saying little. England itself feels tired. Years of misrule have left scars that no ceremony can erase. Nobles distrust the crown, borders feel unsafe. The treasury strains beneath the cost of past mistakes. People whisper more than they speak openly, unsure who truly governs. The kingdom waits, cautious and uncertain, as if holding its breath. The boy knows the story of how he came here. He has lived it. A father whose authority collapsed under poor judgment, a court divided by favoritism and resentment, a mother who returned not as a queen beside her husband, but as a force of change. None of this is spoken aloud in the chamber, but the silence is full of memory. Even the stone walls seem to remember. Becoming king at 14 is not heroic. It is confusing. Lessons continue as they always have. Tutors arrive with books and careful words. Instructors speak of duty, restraint, and strength. He practices riding even in the cold, because a king must sit a horse with confidence. He learns to handle weapons not as toys, but as tools of responsibility. The motions are repeated again and again until they feel natural, even when the purpose behind them still feels distant. Meals are simple by royal standards. Bread, meat, ale watered down for youth. There is no special food for kings, only larger portions and finer dishes. Eating is not leisurely. It follows a schedule, observed by servants who watch more than they speak. Every gesture is noted. Every habit becomes part of a growing image that others will interpret in their own way. The world beyond the castle walls remains unseen most days. Farmers rise before dawn. Townspeople crowd narrow streets. Most will never see their king, yet their lives move under his name. The boy understands this in theory, though the distance feels enormous. He has been taught that a king is the land, and the land is the people. It is a beautiful idea, repeated often, though it does little to warm a cold chamber at night. What fills the quiet hours is observation. He listens when adults forget he is present. He notices who speaks with confidence and who measures every word. He watches how messages are delivered and how quickly they are answered. Power, he is learning, does not announce itself. It moves carefully, often invisibly. There are moments, brief and private, when the weight feels almost unreal. A child crowned too soon, a role inherited rather than earned. Yet beneath the uncertainty, something steadier begins to form. Curiosity sharpens into understanding. Frustration settles into patience. He does not rage against what he cannot yet change. He watches. He remembers. Night deepens. The fire fades completely. Cold presses closer. And the boy pulls the blankets tighter around himself. Somewhere far away, a bell marks the passing of hours. Time moves forward, indifferent to age or title. In this stillness, wrapped in wool and silence, a king waits. The crown will feel different one day. Not lighter, but more familiar. For now it remains nearby, a symbol rather than a tool. The boy closes his eyes, listening to the steady sounds of the castle settling into sleep. Stone, wood, breath, and fire, all held together by tradition older than anyone living within these walls. In this moment, he is both small and central, fragile and essential, a child shaped by forces far larger than himself, standing quietly at the beginning of a long reign. The night does not rush him, neither does history. For now there is only the slow passing of time, the cold of winter, and a crown placed gently, if prematurely, upon a child's head. England does not feel like a triumphant kingdom. It feels worn, strained, and uncertain, like a structure held together by habit rather than strength. From the outside, castles still rise over towns, banners still hang from stone walls, and the crown still commands respect. But beneath these symbols, the foundations are cracked. Power has been misused for too long, and the land remembers. Years of poor rule have left deep marks. Nobles no longer trust the crown to act wisely. Alliances feel fragile, bound more by fear than loyalty. Decisions once guided by experience have been replaced by purrs. Ownal favour, and the consequences ripple outward. A kingdom cannot drift for long without direction, and England has drifted far. The treasury is thin. Gold that should have strengthened defences or stabilised trade has been spent recklessly, flowing into the hands of favourites rather than the needs of the realm. Taxes have been raised without care, angering towns and countryside alike. Merchants grumble quietly. Farmers feel the strain of demands that never seem to ease. Money moves upward, but stability does not return. Along the borders, danger feels close. Scotland presses from the north, its raids swift and relentless. Villages near the frontier live with constant uncertainty, unsure when smoke might rise on the horizon. The crown's authority there feels distant, unreliable. Soldiers exist, but morale is low, and leadership has been inconsistent. A kingdom divided within rarely defends itself well from threats beyond. Inside England, the nobility is fractured. Old families remember when their advice mattered, when kings listened rather than dismissed them. Resentment has settled into long memory. Councils meet, but trust is thin. Every gathering carries unspoken tension as each man wonders whether loyalty will be rewarded or punished. Politics has become a careful dance, not a shared effort. The people feel these fractures even if they do not fully understand them. Markets still open, bread is still baked, and life continues. But there is an undercurrent of unease, eels uneven. Justice arrives slowly, if at all. When authority weakens, uncertainty grows, and uncertainty breeds fear. England is not collapsing, but it is not whole. The countryside tells its own story. Roads are rough and poorly maintained. Travel is slow, dangerous in places and costly. Messages take days or weeks to arrive, allowing rumours to outrun truth. A decision made in a distant hall may lose its meaning by the time it reaches a village. The kingdom feels stretched thin, its reach longer than its grip. Castles, once symbols of strength, now feel heavy and outdated. Stone walls still stand, but confidence does not live in stone alone. Garrisons wait for orders that come late or not at all. Supplies arrive inconsistently. Even within these fortified spaces, there is a sense of waiting, as though everyone expects change, but no one knows what form it will take. Religion remains constant, offering structure where governance fails. Churches are full, prayers whispered for peace, for stability, for mercy. Faith anchors daily life. Yet even here, people sense that something is wrong. A just king is believed to rule by divine favour, and doubt about leadership quietly becomes doubt about order itself. For a young king, this is the world inherited, not a fresh beginning, but a complicated aftermath. England is not a blank slate, it is a crowded one, filled with unresolved conflicts and quiet anger. Every problem carries history. Every decision carries risk. The crown does no erase the past. It sits upon it. Within royal halls, conversations are cautious. Advisors choose words carefully, aware that speaking too freely can be dangerous. Silence often feels safer than honesty. This is not the environment of strength, but of survival. Those who hold power guard it closely, unsure how long it will last. The people at the top know the truth, even if they do not say it aloud. England's position in Europe has weakened. Where once it commanded respect, now it invites challenge. Rivals watch closely, sensing vulnerability. A kingdom struggling within cannot project strength beyond its borders, and yet within this ruin, life continues. Children are born, seasons change, bells ring. The land itself does not give up easily. Fields still grow grain, rivers still flow. England is wounded, not dead. It waits quietly for leadership that understands the weight of what has been lost. For the boy who wears the crown, this brokenness is not yet something he can repair. He observes it through lessons, reports, and whispered conversations. He learns the shape of the damage before he ever touches the tools needed to mend it. Knowledge comes slowly, layered like stone upon stone. A kingdom in ruins is not defined by destruction alone, but by what remains standing. England still has its people, its traditions, its sense of identity. What it lacks is direction, steadiness, and trust. These are not easily restored. They cannot be commanded into existence. They must be earned. The air within the realm feels heavy with expectation. Everyone knows change must come, though no one is certain how. For now, England exists in a fragile balance, held together by habit, fear, and hope. Beneath the surface, the land waits, silent and patient, for a hand strong enough to guide it back from the edge. Some legacies arrive as gifts. Others arrive as burdens, heavy and unspoken, shaping the present through memory rather than action. For the young king, the past does not feel distant. It lingers in corridors, in whispered names, in the careful way people speak when the former king is mentioned. His father's reign has ended, but its shadow remains. Edward II was not cruel by nature, yet cruelty is not the only way a king can fail. His weakness lay in judgment, in the inability to balance affection with responsibility. He ruled not with confidence, but with preference, elevating those he loved while ignoring those he needed. In a world built on hierarchy and honour, this imbalance proved disastrous. The court had once been a place of order and expectation. Under Edward II, it became unpredictable. Power shifted based on closeness rather than merit. Noble families who had served the crown for generations found themselves sidelined. Resentment grew quietly at first, then openly. When trust between king and nobility breaks, the entire structure of rule begins to tremble. Edward II's choices confused loyalty with devotion. He leaned heavily on favourites, granting them authority far beyond their station. These men spoke for the king, decided for the king, and were seen by many as ruling in his place. To the nobility, this felt like humiliation. To the people, it felt like chaos. A king must stand above factions, not become trapped within them. For the child who would one day inherit the crown, these tensions were not lessons from books, but realities overheard through stone walls. Raised in a court filled with distrust, he learned early that kingship was not simply about wearing a crown. It was about restraint, balance, and understanding the limits of personal desire. Stories of the former king's decisions circulated endlessly. Battles lost not through lack of bravery, but lack of preparation. Counsels ignored until it was too late. Warnings dismissed as insults. Each tale carried the same quiet message. Authority without wisdom invites disaster. Even those who had once defended Edward II spoke more softly now. Their loyalty dulled by time. The weight of comparison settled early. Servants, tutors and nobles watched the son carefully, searching for echoes of the father. Every gesture became meaningful. Every mistake, however small, felt amplified. The child understood this instinctively. He learned to measure his actions, to listen more than he spoke, to observe before deciding. The memory of Edward II did not inspire fear alone. It also inspired caution. The crown had proven fragile. A king could be removed. Loyalty could vanish. Title, heirs could not protect against poor judgment. These truths shaped the young king's understanding of power long before he held any of it himself. Within the court, the former king's name was rarely spoken directly. Silence often carries more meaning than words. When mentioned, it was with careful distance, as if proximity itself were dangerous. The message was clear. This was a past no one wished to repeat, yet no one could forget. The kingdom bore the marks of this failure everywhere. Divided nobles, weakened borders, drained resources. These were not accidents of fate, but consequences of leadership. England's instability did not begin overnight. It accumulated slowly, decision by decision, favoritism by favoritism, until correction became difficult and painful. For the son, understanding his father meant understanding what not to become. He did not need to hate him to recognize the damage done. Memory does not require bitterness to be instructive. In quiet moments, he reflected on how different choices might have led to different outcomes. Not with anger, but with curiosity and restraint. Kingship, he was learning, was less about command and more about balance. A ruler could not afford isolation. He could not rule through affection alone. He had to stand between competing forces, steady and impartial. His father had leaned too far in one direction, and the kingdom had tipped with him. The shadow of a failed father is long, but it is also clarifying. It defines boundaries as klar. Early as it creates fear, the young king did not inherit confidence, but he inherited awareness of how fragile authority could be and how quickly respect could dissolve. As England moved forward under new rule, the past remained close, shaping expectation and caution alike. The boy who wore the crown carried more than gold and ceremony. He carried memory, comparison, and the silent promise that things would not be allowed to fall apart in the same way again. The shadow did not disappear. It followed quietly, reminding him that kings are remembered not for intention but for consequence, and in that knowledge a different kind of strength began to form, one built not on pride but on understanding. Power does not always sit on the throne. Often it stands just beside it, speaking softly while guiding every decision. In England, the crown rests on a young head, but authority moves through other hands. Those hands belong to Isabella of France and Roger Mortimer, figures whose presence shapes the kingdom far more than ceremony ever could. Isabella is not a passive queen. She carries herself with confidence sharpened by experience and survival. Born into French royalty, she understands court politics instinctively. She knows when to speak, when to wait, and when silence itself can become a weapon. Her return to England was not gentle. It was decisive, calculated, and effective. Many saw her not as a grieving wife, but as a force reclaiming control. Mortimer stands beside her, close enough that his influence is unmistakable. A nobleman hardened by exile and ambition, he moves through court with ease, issuing commands with the assurance of someone who believes he belongs there. His authority does not come from blood alone, but from boldness. He acts where others hesitate, filling the vacuum left by uncertainty. Together they govern in the king's name. Documents are signed, orders are issued, councils are called. The language of legitimacy is carefully maintained. Everything is done for the good of the realm and until the king reaches maturity. These phrases are repeated often, soothing on the surface, firm beneath. Few challenge them openly. Fewer still succeed when they try. The court adjusts quickly. Those who once bowed to Edward II now learn new patterns of loyalty. Survival depends on understanding where power truly lies. A nod from Mortimer carries more weight than a glance from the throne. An audience with Isabella can determine a family's future. The young king watches all of this quietly, learning more from observation than instruction. Isabella's control is subtle but complete. She shapes policy through presence rather than decree. Advisors listen carefully when she speaks, knowing her words reflect decisions already made. She rarely raises her voice. She does not need to. Authority flows naturally to those who act as though it already belongs to them. Mortimer's approach is more direct. He rewards loyalty openly and punishes assistance swiftly. His confidence borders on arrogance, yet it proves effective in a court desperate for clarity. Where others see uncertainty, he sees opportunity. He does not hide his dominance. He normalizes it. For the young king, this creates a strange existence. He is treated with respect, addressed with formality, and displayed as the symbol of unity. Yet his role remains ceremonial. He attends councils where decisions are announced rather than debated. He listens to discussions already concluded elsewhere. His presence legitimizes choices he did not make. This arrangement is not unusual in medieval rule. Child kings are rarely allowed true authority. Regents govern. Advisors control access. Power waits patiently for adulthood. But there is a difference between guidance and possession. Here, the line feels thin, almost invisible. The kingdom, weary from chaos, accepts this structure with little resistance. Stability, even borrowed stability, feels preferable to uncertainty. Nobles comply. Towns adapt. England moves forward, not because it is confident, but because it is tired of conflict. Behind closed doors, however, tension simmers. Mortimer's authority grows quickly, and with it, resentment. Whispers follow him through corridors. Ambition always leaves traces. Isabella's position remains stronger, protected by royal blood and maternal connection. Mortimer's is built on momentum, and momentum can shift. The young king senses this imbalance, even if he cannot yet name it. He notices how some advisors avoid Mortimer's gaze while others seek it eagerly. He observes how his mother's presence still commands loyalty without effort. These observations settle quietly into understanding. Life at court becomes a careful performance. Every gesture is measured, every word is weighed. The king learns patience not from books but from necessity. He waits, watches, and remembers who speaks honestly and who speaks carefully. Isabella and Mortimer rule effectively, but not gently. Their control brings order, yet it also deepens division. Authority imposed rather than shared rarely feels permanent. For now, however, their grip holds firm. England moves under their direction, steady on the surface, uneasy beneath. The throne remains occupied, but its power rests elsewhere. In this quiet imbalance, the young king grows, shaped by observation rather than command. The lesson is clear, though unspoken. Power is claimed, not granted, and those who hold it rarely surrender willingly. To be king is to wear a crown, yet to be a ruler is something far more demanding. For a 14-year-old Edward III, the distinction is immediate, unavoidable, and quietly frustrating. He sits at the centre of court life, displayed for all to see, yet every move he makes is carefully guided, observed, and subtly controlled. Authority is promised in name, but in practice, he is a figurehead, a symbol more than a sovereign. Days are structured with ceremony, lessons, and rituals. Advi saws line the halls, each a small actor in the theatre of power, waiting for the boy to act in ways already predetermined. He attends councils where decisions have been made before he speaks. He is expected to nod, to offer formal assent, yet the real deliberation occurs elsewhere, behind closed doors and hushed voices. Every command given in his name is actually the work of others. Living like this is a lesson in patience. The young king watches more than he participates. He listens to the careful negotiations, the whispered disagreements, and the subtle manipulations that pass for politics. He studies how Mortimer moves through the court, how Isabella commands attention without raising her voice. Through observation, he begins to understand the difference between power as seen and power as exercised. Yet the life of a puppet king is not without discomfort. Every action is measured, every word considered. There is no freedom to act impulsively, no room to experiment. Even simple things, where he sits, what he eats, when he moves through the castle, are dictated by others. Servants hover nearby, ready to remind him of protocol. Nobles watch silently, noting gestures and tone. Even in private moments, the boy feels the weight of expectation pressing upon him. The castle itself becomes a study in hierarchy. Stone corridors echo with the quiet authority of those who wield it for him. Guards, attendants, and officials perform tasks that suggest order. Yet their true loyalty lies the regents. Every arrangement, every decision reinforces the illusion of control, teaching Edward the delicate skill of perception. A king must appear strong, even when he is not. Education blends seamlessly with courtly oversight. Tutors guide him in languages, history, and law, yet their lessons are punctuated by reminders of reality. Power is rarely earned, it is often observed. Military instructors teach horsemanship, swordplay, and archery, emphasizing the physical presence of command. Still, even these skills are tempered by circumstance. Until he can wield real authority, he practices discipline rather than strategy. Meals and daily routines are similarly structured. Food arrives in measured portions, prepared with care, yet under supervision. Even here, the young king learns the subtle language of influence, who serves quickly, who delays, who watches more than works. These observations, small as they seem, form the invisible threads of understanding that a puppet king relies upon to eventually claim genuine power. Life in this manner is isolating. Friends are rare, and companionship is often complicated by status. The boy observes older courtiers, noticing their deference mixed with calculation. Even allies within the castle must weigh every word and gesture, for loyalty is fragile when real power is withheld. Yet, within this isolation, Edward cultivates patience and self-awareness, subtle tools that will later prove invaluable. The young king also becomes keenal, aware of appearances. Protocol, ritual, and decorum dominate his existence. Every bow, every gesture, every ceremonial word is rehearsed and evaluated. He learns that kingship is as much about perception as it is about decision-making. In a world where authority is visible, image can be as potent as action. Despite these constraints, small moments of autonomy emerge. Walking through the halls, observing the castle, engaging in conversation with trusted attendants, these become opportunities to learn. Each observation adds depth to his understanding of courtly life and governance. Even the act of remaining still, listening carefully, becomes a form of power, an ability to comprehend the inner workings of a kingdom before attempting to steer it. The young king begins to recognize patterns. Disagreements are resolved behind closed doors. Orders appear formal but are often the result of compromise or coercion. He notes which nobles act cautiously and which act boldly. Over time, this awareness sharpens into strategy, laying the groundwork for his eventual independence. Living as a puppet king is not easy. It is a life of discipline, observation, and careful restraint. Freedom is promised but deferred. Authority is displayed but withheld. Yet within these constraints, Edward learns one of the most essential lessons of leadership. True power requires patience, understanding, and timing. Acting too soon or too rashly can undo even the strongest position. Night brings a quiet reflect. Alone in his chamber, the weight of the crown feels both heavy and empty. The boy considers the delicate balance around him, how much to observe, how much to pretend, and how much to endure. Each day, each moment is an exercise in understanding the nature of authority that will one day be his. In these hours he discovers that being a king is as much about endurance as it is about command. To live as a puppet is to learn the rhythms of control without wielding it, to understand the strings before cutting them. Even as he feels limited, he senses the potential within him, the power to transform observation into action, patience into strategy, and inherited authority into genuine rule. The castle is quiet at last. Servants retreat. Guards shift silently in the shadows. The boy lies awake beneath heavy blankets, listening to the faint sounds of life that continue even as he rests. In these moments, he is neither fully child nor fully king. He is something in between, learning the lessons that only a life constrained by others can teach. The crown rests nearby, waiting, heavy with expectation. Yet the young king grows stronger not in the act of wearing it, but in the careful, patient study of the world it represents. To live as a puppet is to learn control, invisibly, quietly, and with deliberate intention. And in that quiet preparation, a king begins to form. The chamber is quiet, though not silent. Shadows gather in corners where the firelight cannot reach, and the faint echo of footsteps drifts through the stone corridors outside. The room smells faintly of smoke, wax, and the lingering warmth of the day's activities. Every surface, from the cold flagstones to the heavy wooden beams above, speaks of age and permanence, of a world built to endure. In this quiet, the young king lies awake, listening to the heartbeat of the castle itself. A medieval bedroom is unlike anything in the modern world. Comfort is not measured by softness alone, but by layers and protection. The bed is raised from the stone floor, thick with straw and blankets, though the chill of winter still manages to creep in. Furs cover much of the surface, heavy and coarse against the skin, but necessary to stave off the damp cold that no fire alone can banish. Every detail of the room is designed to protect, even if it cannot fully soothe. Walls are lined with tapestries that depict hunts, battles, or noble lineages. Their colours have faded over years, but they still offer both insulation and story. A tapestry is more than decoration. It is a statement, a reminder of heritage and duty. The young king often traces the patterns with his gaze, letting his mind wander through the tales woven into the threads, imagining himself participating in the hunts or witnessing the battles long past. Light is scarce. Candles burn with a fragile flame, their flickering glow casting long dancing shadows. A hearth provides warmth and a soft amber illumination, but it is limited, barely reaching. The corners of the room, the darkness beyond seems almost alive, pressing gently against the walls, and yet it offers a kind of solitude. In this dimness the boy can reflect, can listen, can simply be himself without the constant gaze of advisors or attendants. The furniture is simple, yet functional. A table holds the crown and ceremonial items, carefully arranged and polished. Wooden chairs are sturdy yet rough against the skin. Chests hold clothing and valuables, their iron clasps heavy and secure. Everything in the room has a purpose, yet the presence of such items also serves as a quiet reminder of responsibility. Even the smallest object feels significant when placed in a king's chamber. Servants are present, though unobtrusive. A bedchamber gentleman sleeps on a pallet nearby, close enough to intervene if needed, yet trained to remain silent. Water for washing, simple meals, and the layers of clothing that will later be worn are prepared and laid out with meticulous care. The young king notices these small attentions, realizing that care is not always affection, but part of a system designed to maintain order, safety, and the illusion of control. Noise within the castle rarely stops entirely. The faint creak of floorboards, the distant clatter of armor, the muffled voices of sentries changing guard, these are the rhythms of life in a medieval fortress. To live in such proximity to activity requires adaptation. The king has learned to find his own quiet within the F movement, to locate calm even as the castle itself moves around him. Sleep is both a necessity and a challenge. Straw mattresses do not conform to the body, blankets shift, and the cold penetrates even the thickest layers. Yet the young king finds moments of rest by focusing on patterns, the flicker of firelight, the distant call of a night watchman, the steady breathing of the servant nearby. These small, repetitive sounds provide a kind of rhythm, a lullaby of stone, fire, and human presence. The room itself is a lesson in the balance between visibility and privacy. Curtains and screens can offer some seclusion, yet nothing is truly hidden. The king's every move is, in some measure, observed. Even in private, the presence of attendants, the proximity of walls thick with history, and the knowledge that the castle is alive with activity reminds him that authority is a responsibility before it is a freedom. Decorations and furnishings speak of wealth and lineage more than personal taste. Rich fabrics, embroidered linens, and carved wood showcase the prestige of the monarchy. They are symbols of status, constantly reminding the boy of the expectations tied to his crown. Every night as he moves among these objects, he absorbs their significance quietly, understanding that power is as much about representation as it is about action. The cold stone floor beneath his feet is a stark reminder of the environment in which he lives, where modern beds offer insulation and softness, too. His medieval chamber emphasizes endurance and preparedness. Each step across the room, each shiver from the chill, is a subtle lesson in resilience. To be a king is to bear discomfort without complaint, to stand tall even when the world presses harshly around you. Water for washing is rare, carefully rationed and often cold. The king's face and hands are cleaned with this attention, a ritual that emphasizes both practicality and status. Most people in the kingdom will never bathe this often, yet the ritual itself signals a separation from the ordinary. Hygiene in this context is not simply a matter of cleanliness, but also a reflection of order, of discipline, and of the unique life a king leads. Night stretches long, the fire dims, shadows deepen, and the castle grows quieter. The young king lies beneath heavy blankets, eyes tracing patterns in the darkness, mind drifting among stories, strategy, and the slow accumulation of knowledge. In the stillness he reflects not on what he controls, but on what he observes. Understanding the movements of those around him is the first step toward eventual authority. Even the crown, placed carefully nearby on a polished table, serves as a silent companion. Its weight is more than gold and jewels. It embodies duty, history, and expectation. The young king does not wear it yet, but he studies it, understands its presence, and considers the responsibilities it represents. Its quiet proximity is a reminder that the lessons of the chamber, patience, observation, and endurance, are inseparable from the life he is learning to lead. The room, with its shadows, flickering flames, and heavy furnishings, is more than a sleeping place. It is a school, a sanctuary, and a stage all at once. Here the boy learns to measure himself against history, tradition, and expectation. Every night spent within these walls builds a quiet foundation for the king he will become. In the stillness of the medieval bedroom, comfort and discomfort coexist. Warmth and cold, shadow and firelight, rest and awareness, all are balanced delicately. And it is within this delicate balance that the young king begins to grow, not through action, but through understanding. The night passes slowly, gently, preparing him for the day to come, and in this quiet he learns the first truths of leadership, not through command, but through observation. In the quiet hours before dawn, the castle stirs with purpose. Horses shift in their stalls, the clink of armour echoes faintly through stone corridors, and the young king rises from his heavy blankets, ready to step into a world where skill and discipline are as essential as the crown itself. Training for war is not a matter of fleeting excitement or play. It is a daily ritual, precise, deliberate, and grounded in endurance. The courtyard is cold and still, mist curling along the flagstones as servants and instructors move with practiced efficiency. Horses paw gently at the ground, their breath rising in soft clouds. The boy mounts, feeling the weight of the saddle and the rhythm of the animal beneath him. Horseback riding is not merely a skill, it is a necessity, a way to command presence on the battlefield, and the king must master it with the confidence of someone who carries the authority of the realm, even when that authority is not yet fully his. Archery lessons follow swiftly. A bow, heavy in the young king's hands, demands patience, strength, and accuracy. He draws, releases, and watches as the arrow strikes its mark or falls short. Each attempt teaches focus and restraint. Victory is not celebrated excessively. Mistakes are noted, studied, and corrected. Discipline is ingrained, and the courtyard becomes both classroom and proving ground, a place where the boy measures his abilities against expectations far older than himself. Swordplay is another form of education, one both physical and mental. Wooden practice swords clash in controlled movements, each swing guided by an instructor's careful hand. Balance, timing, and precision are emphasized over force. The boy learns that strength alone cannot prevail. It must be paired with awareness, with understanding of both the opponent and the environment. Every practiced parry and thrust builds not only skill but a quiet confidence, shaping the instincts he will one day rely upon in moments of true danger. Tactics are taught not only in the open air but within the castle walls. Maps, miniature figures, and discussions of history. Cal battles form lessons in strategy. The young king studies the rise and fall of armies, the decisions of leaders, and the consequences of miscalculation. He observes patterns in human behavior, learning that battles are often won before a sword is ever drawn. Thoughtfulness becomes as vital as courage, and he begins to understand that true strength lies in preparation as much as action. Physical conditioning is relentless. Cold mornings and long hours demand stamina. Climbing, running, lifting, and practicing maneuvers develop endurance in both body and mind. Every ache in his muscles, every soreness, is a reminder that readiness cannot be achieved overnight. To be a king in battle is to be resilient in every way, able to face discomfort, fear, and uncertainty without hesitation. Lessons in leadership accompany martial training. Commands are practiced, first in quiet exercises, then among small groups of soldiers. The boy learns to project authority through posture, voice, and eye contact. He understands that leadership is not imposed through fear alone, but through trust, clarity, and presence. Even in minor exercises, he must consider morale, discipline, and the well-being of those he leads. Chivalric ideals are not neglected. Honor, loyalty, and the responsibility of power are instilled through stories, observation, and practice. The king learns that a soldier's respect cannot be demanded merely by title. Respect is earned through fairness, courage, and consistency. A lesson repeated often. Victory is hollow if gained without the loyalty and trust of those who fight alongside. The castle itself becomes part of the curriculum. Narrow corridors, stairways, and gates are practiced upon for defense and movement. The young king learns to assess terrain, to understand the significance of every door, every wall, every window. These lessons are subtle, yet vital. Awareness of space, of opportunity and threat grows as naturally as strength and skill. Food and rest follow a careful rhythm. Meals are simple but nourishing, designed to sustain energy for training rather than indulgence. Sleep comes in measured hours, heavy blankets and straw providing warmth as exhaustion seeps into the muscles. Even rest is purposeful, a time to recover for another day of rigor. The body learns patience, endurance, and rhythm alongside the mind. Mentorship is continuous. Instructors speak not only of combat, but of decision-making, of timing, of observation. Their voices guide, correct, and encourage, forming a framework within which the boy can develop judgment. Mistakes are addressed without ridicule, with the calm persistence of someone teaching both skill and responsibility. Lessons repeat, layering understanding with practice, until knowledge is absorbed without conscious thought. Observation of others is part of training as much as participation. Watching experienced soldiers, noticing their rhythm, understanding their strengths and weaknesses, provides insight. T.S. unavailable in instruction alone. The young king learns to anticipate movements, to predict actions, and to adapt swiftly. In war, foresight is as essential as bravery, and the quiet study of others becomes a lesson in leadership itself. Evening brings reflection. The castle quiets, the fire burns low, and the boy reviews the day in his mind. Mistakes, achievements, and lessons intermingle. He contemplates the weight of command, the responsibilities that extend beyond his own experience. The training is not merely physical, it is shaping perception, judgment, and patience. Each day is a preparation for a future that will demand decisiveness tempered with wisdom. The crown, resting in its polished place nearby, serves as a constant reminder of why this training matters. It is not an ornament, it is a responsibility, a call to readiness that cannot be ignored. The young king learns that preparation is ongoing, that mastery cannot be rushed, and that the body, mind, and spirit must all be aligned before true authority can be exercised. Night settles over the castle. Horses breathe softly in the stables. Guards shift silently. The king's chamber offers quiet and warmth, yet it also reflects the structure of his life, training, observation, and reflection. The body rests, but the mind remains attentive, turning lessons into understanding, mistakes into insight. To train a king for war is to train a ruler for life. The courtyard, the hallways, and the maps are not merely exercise. They are classrooms of discipline, foresight and responsibility. Every swing of a sword, every arrow loosed, every strategy considered is another step toward readiness. In the stillness of the medieval night, beneath heavy blankets and flickering candlelight, a boy becomes a leader, quietly, deliberately, and with unwavering purpose. The first light of morning creeps softly over the castle walls, brushing the stone with pale gold. Mist clings to the fields and low-lying valleys, curling gently around cottages and farmlands like a hesitant breath. England at dawn is quiet, almost fragile, the air still carrying the chill of night, yet it pulses with life. Birds stir in the hedgerows, their song tentative, and the distant sound of a river moving over stones adds a gentle rhythm to the awakening land. Within the castle, the day begins before the sun fully rises. Servants move silently through corridors, carrying water and kindling for the hearths. Horses shift in their stalls, stamping and snorting softly as they await feeding and exercise. The young king rises from his heavy blankets, muscles stiff from the night, and feels the crisp air press against him as he steps onto the cold stone floor. Every morning is a reminder that life in medieval England is measured in ritual and readiness. Outside, the countryside stretches in rolling hills, fields, and woodlands. Smoke rises from distant hearths as villagers begin their day. Cows low softly and chickens peck at frozen earth, searching for sustenance. Farmers emerge, their breath clouding in the cool air, tools in hand, ready to work despite the lingering cold. England at dawn is not idle. It is a careful, measured stirring of human activity, life pressed against the uncertainty of weather, threat, and labour. Within the castle walls, the young king walks to the courtyard, observing the changing light over banners and towers. The air smells faintly of smoke, hay, and stone, carrying both warmth and austerity. Courtyard training begins with horses, swords, and bows, each exercise practiced with precise repetition. Even in the quiet of morning, lessons unfold. Skill, discipline, and observation are never paused, and the young king absorbs these rhythms with patient focus. The castle itself seems to breathe with the dawn. Drawbridges are raised, gates creak as they open, and sentries shift their posts in unison. Each movement is purposeful, rehearsed, a part of the daily choreography that keeps the realm functioning. Stone walls, worn by decades of wind and rain, glint softly in the early light. The air between them is alive with anticipation, and the young king senses it, even if he does not yet fully understand its meaning. Morning meals are simple, yet deliberate. Bread, cold meat, and ale are brought quietly, consumed with care. These meals are sustenance for the body, but also for the mind. They provide a moment of pause before the day's lessons, a rhythm of routine that reinforces structure and order. The young king eats, listens, and observes as he has been trained, understanding that attention to detail is as much a skill as swordsmanship or strategy. Dawn in England is also a reminder of fragility. The cold seeps through walls and floorboards, and even the best prepared castles cannot fully escape it. Chimneys smoke, but warmth is never constant. The land outside is vulnerable to weather, disease, and raiders. Borders are watched, patrols are ready, and every distant sound carries the possibility of threat. A kingdom's strength is measured not only in its armies, but in its ability to endure the quiet, relentless pressures of daily life. The young king walks along the battlements, feeling the stone beneath his fingers and the wind across his face. From this vantage, the fields below seem peaceful, yet he knows how quickly calm can vanish. Villages may look orderly, but the echoes of raids, rebellion, and mismanagement linger in memory. England at dawn carries the past within it, quiet but persistent, shaping the world he is learning to govern. Light shifts slowly, softening shadows and illuminating the banners that hang proudly from towers. The lions, emblems of England, catch the pale sun and reflect a sense of authority, even as the real power often moves elsewhere. The young king studies them carefully, understanding that symbolism can be as persuasive as action. That perception of power is a force in itself. Even as the day begins, England teaches lessons abeau. Order, loyalty, and the subtle ways influence spreads through land and people. Daily life in the castle unfolds with careful precision. Horses are exercised, armor is polished, and servants move efficiently without unnecessary words. Each task, no matter how mundane, contributes to a sense of structure that allows the kingdom to function. For a boy on the cusp of authority, these small movements provide insight into leadership. Every detail matters, every routine is significant, and the consistency of action reinforces the stability of rule. Beyond the walls, the kingdom breathes. Rivers glint with morning light, animals stir, and winds move through forests with gentle insistence. Villagers leave hearths and homes to tend to livestock, plough fields and repair fences. England at dawn is alive with quiet labour, persistence and subtle beauty. It is a land resilient against cold, hardship, and the challenges that arise daily. To witness it from the vantage of a king's chamber is to understand the interdependence of people, land, and authority. The young king listens to the sounds of the castle coming alive, the clatter of pots, the soft clop of horses' hooves, the distant voices of guards and servants. All form a rhythm, a heartbeat of life that is steady, reliable, and ongoing. In this calm yet purposeful beginning, he observes not just the people, but the timing, coordination, and order that make the realm function. Understanding these subtle patterns is a lesson in governing. CE as much as any swordplay or strategy. As dawn matures into morning, shadows shrink and warmth spreads gradually across stone and field. England awakens fully, carrying with it the promise and burden of the day ahead. The young king prepares to step into this living, breathing world, aware of its rhythms, dangers, and beauty. In the quiet, reflective hours of dawn, he absorbs lessons that are invisible yet powerful: patience, observation, and an understanding of the subtle forces that sustain a kingdom. England at dawn is gentle yet demanding. It offers moments of beauty, calm, and reflection, yet it is never static. The land, people, and castle move together in harmony with necessity and routine. For the young king, this is a classroom without walls, a place where the world teaches by existing, where observation shapes understanding, and where the rhythm of life becomes a guide for the responsibilities that will one day rest fully on his shoulders. The light strengthens, fires burn brighter, and the castle stirs with purpose. Birds sing, wind shifts, and the kingdom pulses quietly in anticipation of the day. In these hours, England teaches endurance, vigilance, and awareness, preparing those who rule to meet the challenges ahead with patience, clarity, and quiet strength. The young king, standing among stone and mist, feels the weight of responsibility and the depth of potential. learning that even the calmest moments contain the essence of leadership. The northern winds care. Rye a chill that seeps deep into the bones, even through thick cloaks and furs. Scotland looms to the north, its hills and valleys shrouded in mist and mystery, a land that has long resisted control from across the border. To the young king, these lands are not just geography, they are a looming presence, a reminder that threats do not always arrive with warning. Danger can be patient, hidden in forests, hills, or even the loyalty of those meant to protect. Reports arrive daily from scouts and messengers. Villagers whisper of raiders moving silently through the night, of farms plundered and livestock taken. Every description carries the weight of urgency. The Scottish raiders, skilled and relentless, do not fight merely for conquest. They fight for survival, for territory, and for tradition. Each report shapes the boy's understanding of the fragile nature of kingdoms and the delicate balance between fear and preparation. The young king observes the castle's preparations carefully. Soldiers move in precise formations, sharpening blades, checking armor, and inspecting arrows. Horses are fed, saddles polished, and every detail attended to with diligence. Each action demonstrates that readiness is as much about order and discipline as it is about strength. The castle becomes a living organism, responding to the distant threat with purpose and coordination. Training takes on a sharper focus. Archery and swordplay are no longer exercises in skill alone, they are rehearsals for real. Danger. The boy practices under the watchful eyes of instructors, imagining the sudden clash of steel and the chaos of movement in the dark. Every swing of the sword, every draw of the bow, is a lesson in control under pressure. The Scottish threat transforms training into preparation and preparation into survival. Even within the safety of the castle walls, tension hums quietly. Courtiers discuss strategy in low voices, each aware that mistakes could be costly. Advisors weigh the strength of forces, the terrain, and the morale of soldiers. Plans are drawn, revised, and debated, while the young king watches silently, absorbing knowledge of leadership through observation. He understands that fear does not dictate action, but caution and clarity do. The Scottish raiders are not predictable. They move swiftly, often under the cover of darkness, exploiting weaknesses with precision. Villages report sudden attacks, small groups of men disappearing into forests before reinforcements can arrive. Their reputation as skilled fighters precedes them, and the young king begins to comprehend that warfare is as much about intelligence, observation, and anticipation as it is about brute strength. The night brings heightened awareness. Torches flicker along the castle walls as guards patrol vigilantly, listening for any sign of intrusion. The chill of the northern wind carries distant sounds that might signal danger. The snap of a branch, a hurried footstep, the faint echo of voices. Even sleep becomes a delicate balance between rest and readiness, as the young king learns that vigilance cannot be paused entirely when a threat lingers close. Meetings with advisors focus not only on tactics but on human behavior. Scouts describe enemy movements, but they also report rumors of alliances, betrayals, and local sympathies. Understanding an enemy requires more than recognizing numbers or weapons. It requires comprehension of their motivations, culture, and patterns of action. The young king listens, forming early lessons in strategy that extend far beyond physical training. In the courtyard, soldiers drill with renewed purpose. The young king practices commands, issuing orders that must be precise and clear. Each shout, each signal is a study in authority, teaching that clarity and confidence can shape action even when fear and uncertainty press from all sides. He begins to see that leadership requires more than presence. It requires the ability to guide others through chaos. Scouts report sporadic attacks along the northern borders. Small skirmishes erupt unexpectedly, testing readiness and adaptability. The boy observes the responses, noting how experienced soldiers adapt to sudden danger, how discipline can overcome surprise, and how panic can spread if control is weak. Every detail is a lesson, a microcosm of the larger challenges that await him when he leads fully. Supplies are checked constantly. Food, weapons and equipment must be maintained and ready for Sud. Den movement. The castle functions as a hub of preparation, a carefully orchestrated network where each person knows their role. The young king watches closely, understanding that leadership is not only about grand gestures, but about the quiet efficiency of systems that support action and survival. The Scottish threat emphasises the unpredictability of the world beyond the castle. Snow can hide tracks, forests can conceal movement, and loyalty can shift as quickly as the wind. Every day, the boy gains understanding of risk management, patience, and observation. He realises that courage alone is insufficient. Knowledge, timing, and preparation are equally essential. Night falls again, and the castle settles into a tense rhythm. Fires burn low, but the vigilance continues. Guards whisper quietly as they patrol the walls, listening for even the faintest sign of intrusion. The young king lies beneath heavy blankets, reflecting on the day's lessons, aware that each moment spent observing, learning, and practicing is shaping the mind and body of a ruler capable of facing both immediate and enduring threats. The Scottish threat, though distant, looms large in the consciousness of all within the castle. It is a reminder that kingdoms are fragile and power is never guaranteed. For the young king, it is a teacher, showing that leadership is not just about wearing a crown, but about preparation, observation, and the patience to act decisively when necessary. As the night deepens, quiet settles over the castle. The young king drifts into sleep, aware of the dangers beyond the walls, yet comforted by the discipline and readiness cultivated through training and careful planning. Even in dreams, he absorbs the lessons of vigilance, strategy, and the weight of responsibility that comes with ruling a kingdom constantly under threat. The morning mist clings stubbornly to the northern hills, and the young king watches silently from atop a slight rise. The Weardale Valley stretches out before him, rolling hills punctuated by dark patches of forest and the winding river that gives the region its name. Everything about the landscape seems ordinary at first glance, yet he knows it holds unseen dangers. Shadows of the enemy could lie in every hollow, and every tree line could conceal movement. Soldiers stir below him, armour glinting faintly in the pale sunlight. Horses snort, shifting their weight as they sense tension in the air. Drums echo softly across the valley, signalling readiness, though the sound seems swallowed quickly by the hills. Even the wind seems cautious, carrying hints of uncertainty as if it too understands the fragile balance between preparation and disaster. The young king moves among his men, cloak pulled tightly against the cold. He carries a sword, though more as a symbol than as a tool he will rely upon today. His role is visible, ceremonial, and instructive. He studies the soldiers' positions, their interactions, and the careful arrangements. F. Supplies and equipment. Each observation builds a mental map of order and potential chaos alike. The first signs of disorder are subtle. Scouts report that enemy movements are faster than expected, their paths unpredictable and their numbers difficult to estimate. The young king feels a tight knot of anticipation in his stomach. Not fear exactly, but awareness of the limits of preparedness. Lessons from the castle, from training, and from observation will be tested in the most immediate way. Reality is rarely as neat as the exercises of practice. Suddenly, the calm fractures. A small band of raiders emerges from the forest's edge, moving swiftly and striking with precision. The soldiers react, forming lines, raising shields and preparing for confrontation. The valley becomes a study in movement and discipline. Yet, despite the training, confusion spreads. Signals are misread, and the force, though structured, finds itself reacting rather than controlling the engagement. The young king watches, noting the challenges that cannot be mitigated by skill alone. Terrain disrupts formation. Hidden paths allow the enemy to flank unexpectedly. The weight of armor and exhaustion dulls reflexes. Even the best prepared soldiers are at the mercy of variables that no amount of training can fully account for. Observation becomes as critical as action, and patience proves as essential as courage. As the skirmish escalates, the young king experiences a sensation entirely unfamiliar, helplessness. Orders are given in his name, yet he knows that the real influence over the battlefield lies elsewhere. He is the symbol of authority, the figurehead whose presence is meant to inspire, but the outcome depends on countless factors beyond his control. The sensation is humbling, almost sobering, and he absorbs the lesson quietly without complaint. Horses rear, men shout, and arrows arc across the valley. The clash of blades rings against the hills, mingling with cries of pain and the commands of officers trying to restore some semblance of order. The young king feels the weight of the crown more acutely than ever. It is a symbol of leadership, yes, but also a reminder of the fragility of control. Even preparation cannot guarantee success. The campaign unfolds in chaotic patterns. Units become separated, small pockets of soldiers are ambushed, and the valley itself seems to conspire against their movement. The young king observes how quickly structure can dissolve under pressure, and how even well-laid plans require adaptability and calm. Patience, he realizes, must accompany courage. Foresight must accompany action. Amid the chaos, moments of clarity emerge. Loyal soldiers act decisively, creating small zones of order amidst the disorder. They shield the inexperienced, guide movements, and maintain morale even as the valley seems to collapse into unpredictability. The young king studies them closely, absorbing lessons in leadership that cannot be taught in a castle courtyard or a training ground. The valley echoes with the sounds of struggle and survival. The river winds silently, indifferent to human conflict, reflecting the muted sunlight as though observing the unfolding chaos. The young king feels both the weight and the fleeting nature of power. Today his presence matters, but it does not dictate outcomes. The campaign teaches him that authority must be coupled with wisdom, observation, and the capacity to respond to the unexpected. By midday, the valley settles into an uneasy calm. The Scottish raiders withdraw as quickly as they appeared, leaving the English forces to regroup and tend to injuries. The young king surveys the aftermath. noticing the scattered gear, the exhausted soldiers, and the quiet despair that accompanies failure. Yet in this, there is also insight. The battlefield is an honest teacher, exposing weaknesses and revealing strengths that no exercise can simulate. The king's own role remains primarily symbolic, yet even as a spectator, he absorbs lessons that will shape him. He understands that courage alone is insufficient. Discipline, strategy, and adaptability are equally vital. He observes patterns in both failure and success, committing these silent insights to memory for the future. Evening falls, and the valley is quiet again, though the echoes of the day linger. Fires are lit to warm exhausted men, and the young king retreats to a place of relative calm, contemplating the lessons learned from disorder. The valley, the wind, and the distant hills have taught him about fragility, resilience, and the unyielding unpredictability of life beyond the castle walls. The Weardale campaign, brief though it is, leaves an indelible mark. It teaches the young king humility, the limits of control, and the importance of observation and adaptability. Even amidst chaos, lessons are available to those willing to see them, and the valley becomes a silent mentor, instilling knowledge that will guide him long after the day ends. As night settles, the young king lies beneath heavy blankets, muscles aching from the strain of witnessing the campaign, heart steady but thoughtful. He contemplates the lessons of the battlefield. Preparation is essential, but so is the ability to endure failure. Courage is vital, but patience and understanding are equally indispensable. Through observation and reflection, he begins to weave the threads of experience into the foundation of a ruler who will one day command with wisdom and strength. The castle is quiet, though the echoes of the day's chaos still linger in every corner. The young king sits by the low burning hearth, its amber glow flickering across the stone walls. Shadows dance gently on tapestries, reminding him that even in calm, the past leaves its imprint. Today, the Weardale campaign has ended not in triumph, but in lessons carved from fear. It is a different kind of teaching, silent, persistent, and deeply personal. Fear is not merely an emotion in this room, it is a teacher. The young king feels it in his chest, a steady pulse that keeps him aware of every detail. He recalls the sudden rush of raiders through the valley, the cries of men, the chaos of misaligned orders, and the fleeting sense of helplessness. These memories are not frightening for their own sake. They are instructive, revealing the fragility, authority, the unpredictability of life, and the weight of responsibility that he carries even at a young age. Observing the aftermath, the king notes the faces of his soldiers. Exhaustion, frustration, and quiet fear are etched into every line. Some are bitter at the failures, others resigned to the unpredictability of war. Yet amidst this, loyalty persists. Even fear cannot erase the bonds formed by shared trials. The young king studies these reactions, realizing that leadership is not a solitary exercise. A ruler must understand the emotions of those he leads, guide them through uncertainty, and inspire confidence even when circumstances falter. Maps and reports litter the table before him. Scouts describe movements of the enemy, areas where the English forces faltered, and moments when strategy collapsed under the pressure of reality. The young king pores over each detail, his eyes tracing the paths of soldiers and raiders alike. Fear has inscribed lessons in ink, in the movements of men, in the terrain itself. He understands that knowledge drawn from danger is far more enduring than any textbook. The young king reflects on his own role during the campaign. Though largely symbolic, his presence was necessary, a reminder that authority is both perception and reality. Fear taught him humility, the understanding that visibility does not equal control, and that even a crown cannot shield one from the consequences of miscalculation. Observation, patience, and quiet learning are as vital as courage in shaping a capable leader. Night deepens in the castle, and the young king retreats to the study of his mind as the hearth warms his room. Fear has a peculiar clarity. It sharpens the senses, heightens awareness, and forces reflection. Every misstep of the campaign is catalogued mentally. The miscommunication between units, the difficulties of terrain, the timing of enemy movements, and the exhaustion of men. These observations are not a source of despair but a guide, a set of invisible instructions for the future. Even the smallest details become important. The weight of armor, the shifting of horses, the faint noises carried on the wind, all are less ons written in fear. The young king begins to understand that awareness of vulnerability is the first step toward mastery. Every error observed, every moment of panic is a note in a growing ledger of knowledge. This ledger is invisible to others, but it is being carefully etched into his mind, forming a quiet but unshakable foundation. Servants move silently around the room, tending to fires and carrying simple meals. Their calm contrasts with the turbulence of the battlefield, yet it underscores a vital truth. Stability and preparedness are cultivated not only in grand actions but in the careful rhythm of daily life. Even in fear, the young king learns that leadership requires an understanding of systems, routines, and the quiet work of maintaining order. The castle walls themselves hold lessons. The stone has witnessed countless sieges, rebellions, and crises. Their permanence contrasts sharply with the fleeting chaos of battle. The young king studies the fortifications, noting how preparation, positioning, and foresight can make the difference between survival and disaster. Fear, he realizes, is a natural reaction, but it can be transformed into vigilance, planning, and resilience. Books, scrolls, and diagrams provide another dimension to the lessons of the day. Tactical studies of past conflicts, notes on leadership, and historical campaigns illuminate successes and failures from generations before him. The young king compares these with the reality he witnessed. Seeing H. Our theory often clashes with practice. Fear becomes a lens, sharpening his understanding of the gap between expectation and execution. The soldier's fatigue and the wounded left in the valley remind him that decisions have consequences beyond strategy. Each misstep, each miscalculation affects lives. Fear teaches empathy alongside caution. The young king recognizes that leadership is not abstract. It is human, tied to the well-being, courage, and survival of those who follow him. Every lesson drawn in fear carries the weight of responsibility. As the night stretches on, the young king contemplates future campaigns. Fear has not been paralyzing. Instead, it has been instructive. He begins to chart improvements, adjustments, and strategies in his mind. Observation, reflection, and patience combine with courage, forming a foundation for a ruler capable of facing uncertainty with measured decisiveness. The lessons are intangible yet profound, written not on paper but in awareness, intuition, and understanding. Even in the quiet darkness of his chamber, the young king feels the subtle pulse of fear transformed into knowledge. The flickering firelight reflects off armor and tapestries, a gentle reminder of both the fragility and resilience of the world he inhabits. Awareness of danger sharpens perception, and careful observation translates uncertainty into preparation. By the time the candles burn low, the young king is at peace, resting beneath heavy blankets, muscles weary but me. ND alert. He understands that fear, when acknowledged and studied, becomes a teacher rather than a tyrant. The lessons written in fear are enduring. They guide reflection, inform strategy, and cultivate resilience. Through these quiet, somber reflections, the boy begins the subtle, lifelong transformation from symbolic figurehead to thoughtful, capable ruler. The castle settles into silence, but the lessons remain, etched into memory, alive in understanding. Fear has imparted knowledge of the world beyond warmth and safety, a world where vigilance, observation, and patience are as vital as courage and strength. Within this calm, the young king absorbs the truths of leadership, each one a gentle but firm reminder of what it means to bear the weight of a kingdom. The early morning air in the castle courtyard is crisp, carrying the scent of stone warmed by the weak sunlight and the faint tang of the nearby river. The young king walks slowly, cloak wrapped tightly around his shoulders, observing everything as if each detail might hold a key to understanding. Breaking free from control is not a matter of sudden rebellion or loud confrontation. It is a subtle, quiet process, requiring patience, observation, and a careful timing that even a boy must learn to sense. Every step through the castle serves as a reminder of both constraint and potential. Guards nod as he passes, servants move efficiently to tend their duties, and advisors glance cautiously in his direction. The young king feels the weight of authority resting on him, yet knows instinctively that true power has been restrained, held in the hands of others who dictate the flow of action under the guise of his rule. The crown he wears is heavy, both with expectation and with unspoken limitation. Education has been his ally. Lessons in swordsmanship, horsemanship, strategy, and leadership have shaped him, even while others have controlled decisions. Every training session, every carefully observed drill becomes a tool in the quiet work of liberation. He has learned to watch and wait, to understand patterns in the movements and habits of those who hold power over him. Insight, he realizes, is the first step toward autonomy. Observation extends to the court itself. The Queen Mother, advisors, and influential nobles move with their own rhythms, expecting compliance. Yet in watching them, the young king begins to see gaps, contradictions, and vulnerabilities. Power is not monolithic. It is divided, dispersed, and sometimes insecure. The first step in breaking free is recognizing that authority depends as much on perception as on law or title. Awareness becomes a quiet weapon, sharpening his ability to act when the moment is right. Training in the martial arts, which once seemed a measure of mere skill, becomes a means of empowerment. The young king's hands are steady, his muscles conditioned, and his reflexes sharp. Every arrow loosed, every practiced sword swing, every maneuver from horseback is a quiet rehearsal of self-reliance. Strength is no longer abstract, it is a tangible resource, a foundation upon which autonomy can be built. Even the castle's routines provide lessons. Meetings, audiences, and ceremonial duties become opportunities to understand the flow of power. How decisions are made, who influences whom, and where hesitation or overreach exists, each becomes a piece of a puzzle. Patience is critical. Breaking free from control cannot be rushed, and every seemingly small observation adds to the strategy of eventual independence. The young king also studies human behavior closely. Loyalty, fear, ambition, and pride are all visible in the faces around him. He notices how influence can be wielded through words, gestures, and subtle cues. Knowledge of people becomes as valuable as any weapon. Understanding their motivations allows him to anticipate actions and responses. Insight into human nature is a quiet but indispensable tool in the work of gaining real power. Reflection accompanies every step. In the quiet of his chambers, the young king reviews the events of the day. Each encounter, every whispered conversation, every subtle challenge to his authority is catalogued mentally. He considers not just the actions, but the consequences, the intentions, and the possible outcomes of various choices. Thought becomes a method of control, as powerful as any sword or banner. Breaking free also requires restraint. There is a careful balance between assertion and patience, between action and observation. A misstep could draw attention, provoke resistance, or invite overt suppression. The young king learns that timing, discretion, and the cultivation of allies are crucial. Autonomy is built in silence, in the spaces between commands, and in the accumulation of knowledge that cannot be seized hastily. Physical training mirrors this process. Horseback riding, swordplay, and archery are exercises in discipline, teaching control over both body and mind. Each movement is deliberate, each action considered. Even as others dictate larger decisions, mastery of skill provides a sense of agency. Power can be cultivated quietly, in repetition, in precision, in moments that seem ordinary but are anything but. The king also observes morale, both within his household and among soldiers. Understanding who is loyal, who hesitates, and who might be persuaded is central to breaking free from external control. Influence, he learns, is not only about force, but about trust, perception, and the ability to inspire confidence quietly, without overt displays of authority. Subtlety becomes a form of strength. Within the castle walls, the young king begins to test boundaries carefully. Small decisions, minor commands, and seemingly routine interactions become exercises in exercising independence. Each success, however slight, reinforces confidence and demonstrates the potential for autonomy. The process is slow, deliberate, and entirely unseen by those who assume they steer. Control him. The quiet of night brings reflection. Lying beneath heavy blankets, the king considers the lessons learned through observation, practice, and patient experimentation. The walls around him are thick, the halls dimly lit, yet in the stillness, the mind is active, connecting knowledge, skill, and opportunity. The first stages of freedom are internal, and the young king understands that mastery over self precedes mastery over others. Breaking free from control is not a moment, it is a rhythm. It is practiced in repetition, in measured movement, in careful speech, and in observation of every nuance. Authority is learned, internalized, and gradually asserted. The crown may sit upon his head, but true power grows invisibly, quietly, and with patience. By the end of the day, even as the castle settles into quiet, the young king feels the subtle shift of balance. He is no longer entirely a puppet. Within him, a sense of agency begins to grow, nurtured by observation, discipline, and careful thought. The knowledge that he can act when the time is right is a comfort as much as it is a promise. Night deepens, and the castle is calm. The hearth glows softly, and the young king rests, muscles weary from daily exercise, mind alive with understanding. The work of breaking free is not finished. It will continue over days, months, and years, but he is no longer constrained entirely. Autonomy, patience, and quiet resolve have begun to take root. Even in silence, lessons are clear. Ned and the young king carries them forward, shaping the foundation of a rule that will one day be fully his own. The morning sun spills gently across the stone walls of the castle, softening the sharp edges of towers and battlements. Light glints off the worn armour of soldiers moving through the courtyard, and the faint clatter of hooves echoes across the cobblestones. Today, the young king feels a subtle shift within himself, a quiet recognition that he is becoming something different. He is no longer merely the boy who wore a crown. He is a new kind of king, learning not only the weight of authority but its possibilities. Every day brings lessons, some obvious, some hidden. The boy observes how influence spreads quietly among courtiers, how decisions ripple through villages, how the loyalty of soldiers and advisors must be carefully nurtured. He sees that power is not only exercised through command, but through patience, foresight, and understanding the subtle currents of human behavior. Leadership, he realizes, is as much about perception and wisdom as it is about strength. The castle breathes with routine and ritual, yet the young king feels the stirrings of change. Servants perform their tasks with quiet efficiency. Banners ripple in the morning breeze, and guards maintain their silent vigilance. Every movement, every gesture, is part of a rhythm that he has learned to anticipate and respect. In these familiar routines, he finds the space to consider his own approach. How he will rule not just with inherited title, but with a mind and will of his own. Training remains central. Swordplay, archery, and mounted exercises are no longer mere tests of skill. They are exercises in confidence and decision-making. Every precise movement, every controlled breath, reinforces a sense of agency. The young king practices not only to be capable of defending himself, but to embody the discipline and focus that a true leader must possess. Strength is now measured as much in calm control as in raw power. The hallways of the castle echo with life as messengers arrive and leave, carrying news of the kingdom beyond the walls. Some reports bring opportunity, others carry warnings. The young king studies each carefully, learning to weigh information, discern truth from rumor, and plan accordingly. A new king does not act impulsively. He observes, assesses, and prepares before moving, understanding that measured action carries greater weight than hasty decisions. Even in leisure, the young king learns. Quiet moments by the hearth, reading scrolls or observing the movements of servants and soldiers, reveal lessons in strategy, empathy, and patience. He notices how people respond to encouragement, reprimand, and guidance. Leadership is a dance of influence, subtle and continuous, and he begins to see himself as both participant and choreographer in this complex rhythm. The young king also reflects on history. Tales of past rulers, both triumphant and tragic, provide context for his own emerging identity. Kings have failed through arrogance, inattention, or cruelty. Others have succeeded through wisdom, discipline, and foresight. From these lessons, he extracts principles that resonate with his own observations: fairness, strategic patience, and the careful cultivation of loyalty. A new king must learn from both victory and failure, recognizing that power is fragile and responsibility enduring. Observation extends to the land itself. Rolling hills, rivers, and forests are more than scenery. They are part of the kingdom's structure, influencing trade, defense, and agriculture. Understanding geography, climate, and the rhythms of the people who inhabit the land is a silent but essential aspect of rulership. A king's awareness of his surroundings, both natural and human, strengthens decision-making and ensures preparedness for both opportunity and threat. Daily interactions with courtiers, soldiers, and villagers become exercises in diplomacy and communication. The young king learns the value of listening, of speaking at the right moment, and of observing reactions closely. Even a single word, a glance, or a gesture can convey authority or invite doubt. The new kind of king recognizes that influence is earned as much through subtle understanding as through ceremonial display. Meals in the castle, simple yet deliberate, are moments of reflection. Bread, ale, and roasted meats are consumed slowly, accompanied by consideration of reports, plans, and strategy. In these moments, the young king practices focus and discernment, turning ordinary acts into exercises in mindfulness and planning. Even routine tasks become part of the cultivation of leadership. Outside the castle walls, the kingdom stirs. Farmers tend to fields, rivers carry trade, and distant villages hum with life. The young king observes how small actions contribute to the larger functioning of society. A new kind of king understands that rulership extends beyond the walls of the castle. It encompasses people, land, and the subtle threads that connect them. Authority is exercised not only through laws and decrees, but through understanding, foresight, and presence. The young king's reflection is not limited to strategy or governance. He also considers character. Courage, patience, empathy, and wisdom are qualities he must nurture within himself. Each decision, whether in training, observation, or engagement with others, is an opportunity to cultivate these traits. A new kind of king measures success not only by conquest or ceremony, but by the development of a ruler capable of enduring challenge and inspiring loyalty. Evening settles softly over the castle, the light fading into gentle shadows. Fires glow warmly, the sounds of life winding down, and the young king sits quietly, observing the interplay of movement, sound, and energy. He sees the kingdom not as a series of isolated events, but as a living organism responsive to care, guidance, and attentio. Leadership, he realizes, is not imposed. It is nurtured, and it grows quietly, almost imperceptibly, like the dawn that slowly brightens the horizon. The young king feels a growing sense of purpose. He is still young, still learning, and still discovering the depths of his own capability. Yet in this calm morning, in the subtle observations of castle life, training, and the land beyond, he senses the emergence of a ruler who is not defined solely by title or inheritance. This is a king who will lead with thoughtfulness, patience, and quiet confidence. A new kind of king, ready to face the complexities of the realm with awareness and resolve. As night approaches, the castle settles into silence. The young king rests beneath heavy blankets, aware of the responsibilities ahead and the slow but steady growth of his own strength. The lessons of observation, training, and reflection continue to guide him, shaping the mind, heart, and character of a ruler unlike any before. In these quiet hours, the young king understands that leadership is as much about inner mastery as it is about command, a lesson that will remain with him throughout his reign. The cold air of early morning drifts over the castle walls, carrying the faint scent of dew on the distant fields. The young king moves deliberately through the courtyard, observing the soldiers as they prepare for drills and maneuvers. Each man is a living part of a growing system, and the young king begins to see the potential of something end far greater than individual skill or valor. He is witnessing the birth of a war machine, one that will become the backbone of England's strength, disciplined, coordinated, and unstoppable when wielded wisely. The soldiers line up in formation, their armor catching the weak sunlight, weapons polished to a dull gleam. The young king observes closely, noting the precision of each movement, the way commands flow and are repeated down the line. Discipline is not just about order, it is about trust, about knowing that every man understands his role and will act in concert with others. In this realization, the young king sees the essence of power, unity harnessed to purpose. Training is rigorous and unrelenting. Archers practice their volleys with patient repetition, learning not just accuracy but timing and coordination. Cavalry maneuvers through mock battles, perfecting speed, formation, and response to sudden change. Infantry drills emphasize resilience, endurance, and the ability to hold line under pressure. The young king participates when required, not just as figurehead but as an observer, internalizing the lessons of logistics, strategy, and human behavior that are embedded in every movement. Even the smallest details matter. The angle at which a sword is held, the positioning of a shield, the spacing of archers, each contributes to the effectiveness of the whole. The young king learns that success in war is not a product of brute force alone, but of preparation, coordinatio, and meticulous attention to detail. This war machine is not merely an army, it is a living, dynamic system, a synthesis of discipline, skill, and strategic thought. The castle becomes a hub of planning and observation. Advisors map out potential campaigns, noting terrain, supply lines, and enemy movements. The young king studies these plans carefully, observing how strategy is not just about confrontation but about foresight, control over resources, timing of movements, and understanding the psychology of both friend and foe are all part of this intricate machinery. Leadership, he realizes, is the act of orchestrating all these elements toward a single cohesive purpose. Training exercises often involve mock battles that simulate chaos and unpredictability. Soldiers move through fog, climb hills, cross rivers, and respond to surprise attacks. The young king observes how officers adjust plans on the fly, how small units adapt, and how communication sustains cohesion amidst confusion. Here, he sees the essence of resilience. A war machine is only as strong as its ability to recover, adapt, and continue functioning under pressure. Beyond the courtyard, the kingdom itself contributes to the preparation of England's power. Villages supply provisions, smiths forge weapons, and stables maintain horses. Roads, rivers, and supply depots become arteries of efficiency, supporting the broader system. The young king watches the integration of these components, understanding that the strength of a kingdom is measured not only by its soldiers, but by the network of support that sustains them. Observation extends to the men themselves. Loyalty, discipline, and morale are as vital as skill with weaponry. The young king notes which soldiers excel under pressure, which hesitate, and how camaraderie influences cohesion. Leadership is about guiding people through fear, maintaining their confidence, and ensuring that trust in one another is unshakable. A war machine, no matter how finely tuned, is fragile without the human element. Even in the quiet moments, lessons continue. The rhythm of the castle, the careful coordination of tasks, and the preparation of armaments all reinforce the value of foresight. The young king reflects on the integration of people, strategy, and material resources. Power is amplified when each component functions in harmony, and he begins to understand his role not as a solitary figure, but as the center of coordination, the mind guiding the organism of state and army alike. The young king's own training is subtle but essential. Riding, swordsmanship, and tactical observation are exercises in both skill and awareness. Understanding how soldiers move, how terrain affects strategy, and how timing dictates outcomes prepares him for future campaigns. Each lesson is embedded quietly into muscle memory and intuition, forming the foundation of a ruler capable of commanding complex operations with calm precision. Messengers arrive with intelligence of distant threats, supplies, and potential alliances. The young king studies each message, observing patterns in information, reliability of sources, and potential consequences of action. Even without issuing orders, he begins to internalize the process of strategic planning, learning that awareness and interpretation are as essential to a war machine as its physical components. The castle buzzes with controlled activity. Weapons are sharpened, armor maintained, and archery targets reset. Every action reinforces discipline, coordination, and preparedness. The young king observes quietly, noting how small efforts accumulate into larger efficiency and how even brief lapses could compromise the entire system. A kingdom's strength is measured not only in victories, but in the relentless, unseen work that sustains it. The young king also considers the human cost of war. Drills and preparations are not just abstract exercises, they simulate danger, fear, and the chaos of real battle. Understanding the weight of responsibility for those who serve and for the people of the kingdom is a crucial lesson. The war machine is not merely a tool of conquest, it is a responsibility, a delicate balance between power and duty. Evening falls, and the castle quiets. Soldiers rest, fires flicker, and the young king finds a moment alone. He reflects on the day, on the coordination, the discipline, and the intricate network that sustains England's growing power. He recognizes that leadership is a bow, guiding people and systems together, understanding that strength arises not only from individuals, but from their ability to function as a whole. The young king feels a growing confidence, tempered by awareness. The war machine is more than metal and muscle, it is preparation, strategy, discipline, and loyalty woven into a seamless whole. Observing its function teaches him lessons in planning, patience, and the quiet authority that comes from understanding rather than coercion. England's strength is taking shape, and with it, the young king's understanding of what it means to command responsibly. As the night deepens, the young king rests beneath heavy blankets, muscles tired but mind alert. He contemplates the silent lessons of coordination, preparation, and observation. England's war machine is not complete, nor is his understanding of it, but the foundations are strong. The young king drifts into a calm sleep, absorbing the knowledge that preparation, discipline, and unity are the true engines of power, and that he will one day direct them with the wisdom of a ruler who has learned through careful observation, patience, and quiet reflection. The early morning sun stretches across the castle battlements, painting the stone walls in soft shades of gold and amber. The young king stands quietly, gazing toward the horizon where distant lands promise both opportunity and challenge. In his mind, the idea of claiming the French crown is no longer a dream whispered in corridors. It is becoming a careful, deliberate plan. Every detail, every observation, every lesson learned over the years begins to converge, guiding him toward the moment when he will assert his claim with quiet authority. The kingdom beyond the walls is alive with preparation. Messages travel swiftly between courtiers, advisors, and allies, each carrying intelligence that must be weighed carefully. Knowledge is power, and the young king has come to understand this deeply. He studies the landscape, the political tensions, and the strengths and weaknesses of those who would oppose him. Claiming the French crown will require patience, strategy, and the subtle orchestration of alliances that extend far beyond England's shores. Soldiers train with renewed focus, aware that campaigns abroad demand more than courage. They demand discipline, coordination, and adaptability. Cavalry maneuvers are practiced on uneven terrain. Archers refine timing and accuracy, and infantry drills emphasize flexibility under pressure. The young king observes each movement, learning not only from success, but from the small missteps that reveal vulnerabilities. Every detail contributes to a deeper understanding of both his army and the challenges ahead. The claim itself is more than legal argument or ceremonial declaration. It is a symbol, a statement of intent that must be supported by perception and strength. Letters and envoys are dispatched, carrying careful words designed to sway allies, temper adversaries, and solidify the king's position in the intricate web of European politics. Diplomacy becomes an extension of strategy, a tool as vital as sword or shield, and the young king learns to wield it with precision and subtlety. Observation is constant. Courtiers, soldiers, and foreign emissaries reveal much through their words, gestures, and reactions. The young king studies these nuances, noting who is loyal, who hesitates, and who might be persuaded. Influence is exercised quietly, often through subtle demonstration of confidence and competence, rather than overt force. A claim to a crown is not merely a legal matter. It is the careful cultivation of belief, trust, and expectation. Maps and diagrams cover the table in the strategy room. Rivers, mountains, and roads are analysed for both opportunity and obstacle. Supply lines are planned, intelligence assessed, and contingencies considered. The young king's mind works through scenarios, anticipating challenges and imagining solutions. Understanding the terrain is as essential as understanding men. Even the mightiest army can falter without knowledge of the ground it must traverse. The young king's personal training continues in tandem with strategic planning. Swordplay, archery, and mounted exercises sharpen both body and mind. Each movement is deliberate, each action measured. Physical skill is a reflection of mental discipline, and the young king understands that a ruler must embody both. Confidence arises not from arrogance, but from preparation, awareness, and the quiet mastery of skill. Daily routines become moments of reflection, and learning. Breakfasts are simple, conversations measured, and time spent observing those around him is treated as valuable instruction. The young king notes how advisors respond to questions, how soldiers maintain discipline, and how courtiers navigate social hierarchy. Even in calm moments, the mind records, analyzes, and synthesizes. Every observation strengthens the foundation for the bold claim he intends to make. The complexities of European politics are ever present. Alliances shift, rumors spread, and ambitions clash. The young king studies these movements closely, recognizing that claiming the French crown is not only a question of legitimacy, but of timing, perception, and influence. A carefully constructed claim must be supported by visible strength and persuasive presence. It must inspire confidence while deterring opposition. The king also considers the human dimension. Soldiers and subjects alike must believe in the purpose and rightness of the endeavor. Morale is a silent but essential element of strategy. By understanding the fears, hopes, and motivations of those who follow him, the young king strengthens the foundation upon which the claim will rest. Authority is cultivated, not assumed. Evening settles over the castle, casting long shadows across stone corridors and quiet courtyards. Fires glow in hearths, and the young king finds a moment of solitude to reflect on the magnitude of what lies ahead. The claim to the French crown is more than ambition. It is a test of leadership, foresight, and patience. Every lesson learned, from observation, from training, and from careful reflection, becomes a guide in navigating this complex endeavor. As night deepens, the castle falls silent. The young king rests beneath heavy blankets, muscles tired from training, mind alert with strategy and observation. The vision of a united England pressing a claim across the Channel occupies his thoughts, tempered by awareness of the challenges and responsibilities involved. He understands that leadership requires careful preparation, deliberate action, and steady confidence. The dream of the French crown is no longer distant. It is a path laid before him, mapped with care, guided by wisdom, and prepared through decades of observation and training. The young king drifts towards sleep, absorbing lessons learned, aware of the subtle balance between power and responsibility, and readying himself for the time when England's claim will be voiced, respected, and pursued with both conviction and strategic mastery. The air carries a strange, heavy stillness, even within the castle walls. The young king walks slowly through the stone corridors, his cloak drawn tight around his shoulders as he observes the unusual quiet that has settled over the kingdom. Word of the Black Death has reached every village, town, and city, and the whispers of fear are carried on the wind. This is no ordinary challenge. This is an invisible force, relentless, indiscriminate, and terrifying. The lessons it teaches are different from those of swords and battles. They are lessons of patience, resilience, and the fragility of life itself. The castle, usually bustling with activity, moves at a subdued pace. Servants work quietly, careful to maintain the routines of life while avoiding unnecessary contact. Their faces are pale, their movements cautious. Even the soldiers, normally loud and disciplined in training, proceed with muted steps. The young king watches them closely, aware that fear and uncertainty can affect morale as profoundly as any battlefield. Leadership now demands calm observation, reassurance, and careful guidance. The Black Death spares no one, and the young king understands this. Nobles, merchants, soldiers, and peasants alike are all vulnerable. The lessons of mortality are stark and immediate. Yet in this time of fear, the young king begins to appreciate the importance of steadfastness. A ruler's presence, calm and measured, provides a sense of continuity and stability when the world seems to be unraveling. Authority is tested not through combat alone, but through the ability to maintain composure in the face of overwhelming uncertainty. Daily routines take on new significance. Meals are simple, washed carefully, and the young king notes how hygiene, though not fully understood, can make a difference. Observation extends to the smallest detail. ILS, the way air moves through the chambers, the methods used by servants to transport supplies safely, and the precautions taken to maintain the health of those in proximity. Awareness becomes a shield, and knowledge, even limited, a form of protection. The young king reflects on the lessons of human behavior during this crisis. Fear brings both unity and discord. Families cling together, neighbors help one another, yet panic and superstition can also lead to irrational decisions. The king watches, learns, and takes mental note of the delicate balance between guidance and restraint. Leadership is about understanding the emotional and psychological state of a population, knowing when to intervene and when to allow space for resilience to grow naturally. Reports arrive from across the kingdom. Some describe villages abandoned, streets empty, and markets closed. Others bring word of brave individuals who maintain essential services, caring for the sick and ensuring that food and resources continue to flow. The young king studies these accounts, noting patterns, understanding human adaptability, and recognizing the importance of organization and foresight in times of crisis. Even in chaos, structures of survival emerge, and a wise ruler observes and supports these systems. Training, once focused on the art of war, adapts to the times. Strategy now includes not only battle formations but the logistics of survival, supply lines, medicine, and protection of essential personnel. Me paramount. The young king observes how adaptability can be as decisive as strength. A ruler's ability to pivot, to respond calmly to shifting circumstances, ensures the kingdom endures even when traditional measures of power are rendered useless. Nightfall brings its own lessons. The young king sits quietly by the hearth, reflecting on the fragility of life and the resilience required to navigate it. He notes the ways fear can paralyze, but also how it can inspire innovation, care, and extraordinary human effort. Leadership is as much about guiding hearts and minds as it is about commanding armies, and this understanding becomes deeply ingrained in him. Even within the castle, preparations are meticulous. Quarantines, careful food handling, and attention to sanitation are practiced as best as knowledge allows. The young king observes the methods employed, learning that small measures, consistency, and attention to detail can make a meaningful difference. The ability to anticipate needs, to organize resources, and to maintain calm order is a skill that becomes more important than the strike of a sword. The young king also reflects on his own mortality, a thought both sobering and clarifying. Even as a ruler, he is not immune to the uncertainties of life. The Black Death teaches humility, patience, and the necessity of careful decision-making. He understands that authority is not absolute. It is exercised within the bounds of circumstance, with awareness of forces both seen and unseen. Through observation of courtiers, soldiers, and servants, the young king notes the resilience that can emerge from fear. Some rise to meet challenges with courage and compassion, while others falter. Understanding these patterns helps him shape guidance, reward effort, and maintain the structure of the kingdom even under duress. Leadership becomes a blend of empathy, strategy, and foresight, informed by both human nature and circumstance. The king also contemplates the wider world beyond the castle walls. Villages, towns, and cities face tremendous loss, yet life continues. Trade, agriculture, and governance must adapt. The young king begins to see the interconnectedness of systems, how one disruption can ripple across the kingdom, and how careful planning and leadership can mitigate the impact. Observation and thoughtful intervention are as crucial as any military campaign. Even in solitude, the young king's mind is active. He reflects on lessons learned, mentally rehearsing responses to various scenarios, understanding that flexibility and clarity of thought are essential. Fear has become a teacher, instructing him in patience, preparation, and the management of both resources and people. The Black Death, though tragic, is a harsh but effective tutor in resilience and adaptability. By night, the castle quiets completely. Fires flicker in chambers, shadows dance on stone walls, and the young king rests, muscles weary but mind alert. He feels the weight of response, ability, yet also a quiet sense of capability. He has observed, learned, and adapted. In this darkness, he understands that leadership is tested not only in victory, but in endurance, empathy, and the ability to guide a kingdom through uncertainty and fear. The lessons of the Black Death are indelible. Mortality, resilience, patience, and careful observation have left their mark. The young king drifts into sleep, wrapped in blankets against the chill of stone walls, carrying within him a profound understanding of leadership, forged in the quiet, terrifying, and transformative hours of living through a pandemic. Knowledge, awareness, and steadfastness are as vital as courage, and the young king absorbs these lessons deeply, readying himself for the challenges that lie ahead. The morning sun spills softly through the narrow windows of the castle chambers, illuminating scrolls, parchments, and the worn wooden desks where records are kept. The young king sits quietly, observing the meticulous work of scribes copying laws and recording decisions that will shape the kingdom for generations to come. The weight of history presses gently upon him, but it is not a burden, it is a guide. He begins to understand that the true measure of a ruler is not only victories on the battlefield, but the lasting structures and institutions that endure long after a crown is passed on. The castle itself hums with quiet activity. Courtiers move carefully between chambers, carrying messages, delivering petitions, and observing the administration of justice. Even as a king who has fought battles and witnessed death, he now turns his attention to the subtler, enduring power of governance. Laws are written not merely as rules, but as instruments that maintain order, protect subjects, and define the responsibilities of both ruler and ruled. The young king studies them closely, learning that fairness, clarity, and consistency are as essential to stability as any army. Observation extends beyond parchment and quill. The young king listens to arguments in the courts, notes the way disputes are resolved, and reflects on the balance between justice and mercy. Some complaints are simple, others complicated by long histories of rivalry or misunderstanding. In each, he sees the importance of clarity, of communication, and of establishing precedents that will guide future generations. Leadership, he realizes, is measured not only by decisions made in the heat of battle, but by choices made in the quiet deliberation of chambers and council rooms. Language itself becomes a tool of legacy. The young king pays close attention to how laws are phrased, how messages are conveyed, and how records are preserved. Words carry authority, shape understanding, and influence behavior. Careful, precise language ensures that the intentions of the ruler are understood, respected, and followed. The young king begins to grasp that the way a kingdom communicates internally and externally through law, Carespo, indents, and public proclamations can strengthen authority and create stability that lasts for centuries. Daily routines reflect this focus on governance. Meetings with advisors are calm, measured, and deliberate. Discussions of policy, strategy, and administration occupy the early hours, while afternoons are spent reviewing records, observing courts, and listening to reports from the regions of the kingdom. Each interaction reinforces the importance of observation, patience, and clarity. Leadership is exercised in these quiet moments, shaping the foundation upon which the kingdom's future will rest. The young king also considers the moral dimensions of law. Decisions are not purely practical, they carry ethical weight. Punishments must be fair, rewards just, and governance balanced. He observes the impact of rulings on both noble and commoner alike, learning that legitimacy arises from perception as much as from enforcement. A law respected is more powerful than one imposed through fear, and a ruler who balances justice with compassion strengthens loyalty, obedience, and unity. Language extends beyond law into everyday administration. Orders must be understood, decrees communicated clearly, and records maintained meticulously. The young king notices that errors in communication can lead to confusion, conflict, or even rebellion. Words are instruments of precision, and their careful use is a mark of wisdom. The subtleties of phrasing, tone, and timing become lessons in authorship. Why and influence, shaping a ruler capable of guiding both men and institutions with quiet mastery. Even in leisure, the young king reflects on legacy. Stories of past kings, both triumphant and tragic, offer guidance. Some rulers are remembered for conquest, others for their wisdom, reforms, and the institutions they leave behind. The young king understands that lasting impact depends on more than victories. It depends on the creation of systems, the careful cultivation of law, and the preservation of knowledge. Leadership is an enduring act, a quiet work that shapes centuries. The castle's corridors offer lessons in administration and coordination. Servants, scribes, and officials all operate within systems that the young king observes attentively. Each role, no matter how small, contributes to the stability and function of the kingdom. Understanding these interconnections teaches him that governance, like war, requires organization, discipline, and foresight. A ruler who neglects these details risks instability, but one who cultivates them ensures resilience and order. Beyond the castle walls, the young king considers the wider kingdom. Villages, towns, and cities rely on clear communication, fair enforcement of laws, and consistency in leadership. He studies the ways in which the crown's authority is exercised across distance, noting the challenges of enforcement, education, and cultural differences. Observation and careful planning enable him to create systems that can endure, despite distance and diversity. Legacy is built not only through immediate action, but through enduring structures that function even in the king's absence. The young king also contemplates the importance of written record. Chronicles, court documents, and correspondence are not merely practical, they are historical, shaping how future generations understand governance, authority, and the lessons of the past. Careful preservation of knowledge ensures that decisions, successes, and failures inform the future. Legacy, he realizes, is intertwined with the clarity of language and the fidelity of record-keeping. In quiet moments, the young king reflects on the balance between law, language, and power. Authority is reinforced when laws are clear, decisions are consistent, and communication is precise. Knowledge is preserved and transmitted, forming the backbone of a kingdom that can endure crisis, change, and generations of leadership. Understanding these principles is as important as mastering strategy or commanding armies. It is the quiet, enduring work of kingship. Evening falls over the castle, the corridors silent except for the soft flicker of torches and the occasional shuffle of servants. The young king sits in quiet contemplation, reviewing the lessons of the day. The subtle interplay of law, language, and leadership has shaped his understanding of authority in a way that no battlefield could. He feels the weight of responsibility, tempered by a sense of purpose and confide. Dense. As night deepens, the young king rests beneath heavy blankets, the flicker of the hearth casting dancing shadows across the chamber. He contemplates the enduring impact of his actions, aware that the laws he observes, the language he cultivates, and the decisions he makes will ripple through time. Leadership, he understands, is measured not only in power or conquest, but in the ability to shape systems, preserve knowledge, and leave a legacy that guides future generations. The young king drifts into sleep with a quiet assurance. The lessons of governance, the importance of law, the precision of language, and the weight of legacy have taken root. He carries these insights within him, knowing that the true mark of a ruler is not merely survival or victory, but the enduring structures, clarity, and wisdom that outlast even the longest reign. The dawn rises softly over the castle, the sky painted in gentle shades of pink and gold. The young king, now a man seasoned by decades of rule, gazes across the rolling hills and winding rivers of his kingdom. England stretches beneath him, a land transformed not merely by conquest, but by vision, discipline, and careful guidance. Every castle, road, and field bears witness to the work of a ruler who understood that true power is built quietly, patiently, and with steadfast purpose. The kingdom hums with life. Merchants prepare their wares, villagers tend to fields, and soldiers march with precision in practice grounds. There is an urgy to the land, a rhythm born of organization, foresight, and the cultivation of loyalty. The king observes, knowing that the strength of a nation is measured not only in victories or laws, but in the well-being, confidence, and cohesion of its people. Authority is alive in these small movements, in the harmony of society functioning as one intricate organism. The lessons of decades are evident everywhere. The army, once fragmented and undisciplined, now moves with coordination and strategic precision. Soldiers are trained not only in arms, but in tactics, logistics, and the responsibilities of duty. The young king, who once learned these skills through trial and observation, now commands an institution capable of defending the kingdom and projecting its power across distant lands. The war machine he nurtured is formidable, yet tempered by wisdom and experience. Governance is equally refined. Laws are codified with clarity, courts run efficiently, and officials carry out their duties with understanding and fairness. Language, carefully honed over decades, communicates authority, guidance, and vision. Every decree, record, and correspondence reinforces order, stability, and the sense of continuity that anchors the kingdom. The king understands that legacy is not simply written in battle chronicles, but in the enduring structures and institutions that outlast the passage of time. The Black Death, once a terrifying spectre, has left lessons that remain embedded in the kingdom. Systems of hygiene, care for the vulnerable, and attention to resources now supplement the administration of justice and the projection of military power. England is stronger, more resilient, and better prepared for challenges than it has ever been. Leadership, the king realizes, is measured not only in the ability to command armies or enforce laws, but in the capacity to guide a nation through adversity with steady hands and a calm mind. Even the land itself bears the imprint of his rule. Roads and bridges connect distant regions, facilitating trade and communication. Markets flourish, towns grow, and villages are better organized. Observation and foresight have turned England into a kingdom that is functional, prosperous, and prepared to face future challenges. The king walks through courtyards and streets with a quiet awareness, noting the harmony of human endeavor supported by thoughtful leadership. The king's legacy extends beyond immediate governance. Education, language, and culture have been shaped by his attention to continuity and preservation. Chronicles, records, and written law ensure that knowledge is passed from generation to generation. Lessons learned through triumph and hardship alike are embedded into the very fabric of the kingdom. Authority, he knows, endures when knowledge is preserved and wisdom shared. Observation remains central to his leadership. Every messenger, advisor, and citizen provides subtle insights into the functioning of the kingdom. By listening carefully, studying patterns, and acting thoughtfully, the king has created a system of governance that is both adaptive and enduring. England's strength is not merely in its armies or castles, but in its capacity to respond intelligently to challenges, maintain order, and inspire loyalty. Even the seemingly small details of daily life are important. Soldiers maintain discipline not through fear alone, but through the guidance, training, and attention the king has invested over decades. Officials execute their duties with diligence, understanding the broader purpose of their roles. Villagers observe, learn, and participate in the rhythms of a kingdom that is both orderly and alive. Leadership, he reflects, is woven into these countless moments of coordinated effort and shared purpose. The king's mind often returns to the lessons of observation, patience, and perseverance that guided him from youth into maturity. Wars, plagues, and political intrigues tested him in ways that required resilience, adaptability, and calm judgment. He understands that lasting change is achieved not through fleeting displays of power, but through consistent, deliberate, and thoughtful action. The kingdom reflects this philosophy in every well-planned battle, every law codified, and every structured institution. In quiet moments, the king reflects on his own journey. From a child who wore a crown too heavy for his years, he has become a ruler who understands both the grandeur and the responsibility of kingship. He recognizes that the measure of a king is not only in conquest or ceremony, but in the enduring influence of wisdom, fairness, and vision. Every reform, every campaign, every careful observation has contributed to a legacy that will outlast his lifetime. The young king, now seasoned by decades, also contemplates the people, their loyalty, their labour, and their participation in the kingdom's life are the true foundations of his reign. He realizes that authority is exercised most effectively when it is supported by respect, trust, and understanding. Leadership is a dialogue, a continuous act of guidance and observation that shapes both ruler and kingdom. As evening settles over the castle, fires glow in the halls, and the soft sounds of life continue beyond stone walls. The king rests briefly, mindful of the work still required to maintain order, prosperity, and stability. Yet there is a quiet satisfaction in knowing that England has been transformed. The seeds planted through careful observation, disciplined training, and deliberate governance have grown into a kingdom stronger, more cohesive, and better prepared for the challenges of the future. The young king, who has become a man of experience, strength, and foresight, drifts into a calm rest, confident in the enduring structures, laws, and systems he has nurtured. England is no longer fragile, divided, or uncertain. It stands as a kingdom shaped by wisdom, perseverance, and careful guidance, poised to endure, prosper, and leave its mark on history. In the quiet of night, with the castle asleep around him, the king understands the lasting truth of leadership. Power is most effective when exercised with patience, knowledge, and foresight. Victory in battle, reforms in law, innovations in administration, and resilience in the face of adversity, these are the elements that define a reign. And in every stone, every law, every soldier, and every citizen, the legacy of this king will continue to shape England forever.